What's up, amigos? Commander Jaime here today, and we're going to go over multiple BCS events that have passed this past week. We're going to cover some lists that are worth pointing out too, so let's get right into it. Check out Dueling Guard's deck boxes, playmats, and binders. The great quality products that are anime based. They continually have more anime options becoming available. Use the affiliated link in the description for a 5% discount on your next purchase. So for the first BCS that we're covering is Costa Rica. So this one was a little more unique. They only had one event specifically to the standard format, and so I'm going to cover the top 4 and also show off the top 8. And as we can see, it's nothing too unexpected. We see Wallista, we see Gandiva, Minerva also made it to top 4, and then there's Michu, which is surprising too. So for those Michu fans as well. The breakdown with top 8 included Zorga Mascus, Chronojet, and Overlord, so nothing too surprising here, but makes sense. Going into the first place list, the Wallista list, it really hasn't changed much. So as you can see, it's typically what we see in Wallista. Wallista does what it does best. I believe the latest set hasn't been legal with this BCS too, so that's why we're probably seeing some of the older decks still. That's going to change with the following BCS events. This event had 74 participants, and kudos to everybody that participated as well. Going into BCS Sydney, we have top 4 for Murakami, Nubatama, more Murakami, and then of course Gerdora. I'm really excited to see Nubatama personally, and what's really cool is that as we go with the top 8, we see there's still more of a diversity happening. So as well, there's some of the Bermuda Triangle decks. That's another variant of the mill deck, I believe, as well. But we still see decks like Dimension Police. We also see Susanoo, which is really cool. And looks like there's 2 different variants of Murakami. I'm not sure what's happening there, if they divided out with Vanquisher / Eradicators, but I'm assuming they're both mixed at that point too. But one of the decks that I wanted to dive into is the Nubatama deck. So shout out to Ubier, representing the Nubatama group. As we look into his list, he is playing the 4 copies of the Oboro with 2 of the OG. He is playing the Esperiata for sure, and obviously these things are becoming hot for the new standard Shiranui too. So if you haven't picked up yours, definitely recommend picking up some. That's going to be needed in standard more than likely too. And we see also something that stood out to me is that he is playing the Rui. I've seen this card being used, and I think it really depends on the effect that you really need it for, but I think the second effect comes up mostly because like it's a way to reduce your opponent's hand, especially when they have 6 or more cards. So it's another card minus at that point, and it makes it hard for them to like deal with more of your domination shenanigans and other types of skills that you're doing as Nubatama. I would expect Hanoli for real, because you want to cap the multi-attack deck, so you're able to not only survive that turn 2 play, but also like just survive during the strike turns. You need to get to the point where you're able to do a successful run, especially with a card such as the Mizukaze, making in that guard restriction so you can seal the deal. We see the Forbidden Doll, we see Sanctitude, still great cards. The G-Zone, 4 Rin, 2 Jaku, 2 Mujinlar. Oh, he's playing the Sukumaroken. Okay, so this is a way to reduce your opponent's cards in their hands to 4, and then from there you can like really get to the point where they have 0 cards because they have to guard with it, or you rip it out with other card effects, and you can actually deal that 6 damage a lot easier. Sometimes you like this is the type of strat that works, especially if they have multiple like protect markers or ticket shields, where Rin isn't just gonna do the job at that point. Switching to standard now, and we have Gandiva, Lutetia, Messiah, and the Snake. This actually came out recently as a box topper for the English, so I'm excited for this. And we can see a little bit of a more diversity breaking down differently in top 8, and what I pointed out is really the great on Mascus. This is one of the decks that legally became recently to be able to play in events too. So there's more on this deck because they got multiple tops in different BCSs, and I will cover a list moving forward too as well. But the deck that I want to cover for this one, from the same player that topped in premium with Nubatama, but this time in the standard format with the closest thing that we have to Nubatama before the Shiranui deck set comes out at that point. So this card is really interesting because it allows you to have multi-attack from the back row as well. You're also able to deck them a lot too. You basically search for cards with the same card name as this card, and you gain all the names in the bind zone. So you're trying to bind stuff, but also that's how you get names at that point. And the cost is buying 1 or more cards. So as long as you filled up a healthy soul at that point, then you could bind as many cards as you need to be able to deck them out of your deck, call them, and really set up a powerful field at that point too. A lot of this deck still uses the Shoujo Doji support. As you can see, use the exact same right line. You see more copies of the actual grade 2 in the main deck and also the grade 1. Again, you want to deck in as much as possible. You're still using the reliable beater such as the Stealth Dragon Unprecedented. This guy is swinging big. You also got the new support that came out recently, so these two cards are phenomenal too as well for the deck. And then of course, there's also the new alternate art, or however you want to call these, with like, this is Forktail technically. So you're pretty familiar with this card, but this is like a different artwork for it. It counts as the same card essentially with the same effect too. With a bunch of crit and of course front triggers to really like have that aggression too. Kudos against the player. Switching gears to V Premium, so we have Dungaree, Chronojet, 2 Thavas, and in top 8 we see Ange, Night Rose, and Royal Paladin in the form of Jewel Knights essentially. And so we have a good amount of diversity in V Premium. Premium is really in a good way where a lot of the decks are viable too, and then the top 8 resolves as it resolves, and then these are the decks that you would expect to, especially Thavas and Night Rose. Night Rose actually just got the V promo too, that's also legal, which I'll show a deck list also moving forward. However, for this BCS, for this specific format, I couldn't find any deck lists on VG Paradox's website, so I don't have anything for this one at least. Moving along to BCS Richmond, also known as Vancouver, and so with Premium we see Victor, we see Highlander, and 2 Norakamis. And as we dive into type 8, there was a 3rd Norakami, and then of course Deep Police, Gurgoid, and Overlord. So these are a lot of decks that honestly really take an advantage of multi-attack in the form of rearguards, but also like Vanguards too. And Victor is really cool. Kudos to Stephen Lay for topping with Victor too as well. And I kind of was surprised actually, but at the same time not. So if I expected with like the new Victor History Collection or Rada, like with the Stride and stuff, usually it's like a 2-to-2 ratio or maybe 3-1 ratio, but it's like the opposite. There's only 1 copy of it. So going first is what's really needed, but if you're going second, you still want to do the V Series Victor. It's really advantageous, not only with the Excel Circle, but also like getting a card from your deck from the top 7 as well. And then moving forward, you still have the Victor name. And then you have phenomenal cards such as Gosauchi, the Sasanda, and then also they also got their V promo as well, so you can stand in a column essentially, but also increase the consistency of discarding and checking the top 5 as well. What's really cool is that they also have guns done, and not only with Gosauchi, but essentially you can give your entire board, or essentially your 5 rearguards, resist, and that is phenomenal because like Denial, Griffin's Cannoneers, and cards like that can't like disrupt you as easily. And so this is something where really Nova grapplers have a way to like, I'm gonna beat you through this brick wall even if you have it, right? It's interesting that they're playing the Rolox instead of Hanali. I think that makes sense because they want to make sure that they survive the early game at that point, because once you're past that, oh, I see, that's why he's playing 2-2 ratios of the heals as well. So this is kind of compensating for that, so he can make it to the Stride game at that point, because Victor is almost like a snowball type of deck, and once you get to the Stride turns, it's gonna keep beating you harder and harder, and it's almost like inevitable because Victor hits so hard, especially with phenomenal strides that it has. You got the first stride if you want to keep flipping cards in the G zone essentially and get closer to your GB8. The GB8 is nuts as well. You also got old school favorite champ Victor that restands and really takes advantage of it. And then of course you also have the card from Premium Collection, also Merciless Dragon as well. And just cause you have Stark as well on top of that. Switching to V Premium, we have 2 Night Rose, Leopold Reverse, and 1 Thavas. And in the rest of top 8, we see Anj, we see Steam Maidens, we see Astro Poets, and more Night Rose / Thavas decks as well. So this is a really good snapshot as well, encompassing more of the meta decks that you would expect to prepare against an event. And going into the first place Night Rose deck, we can see it is pure Night Rose. They're also playing the new card that came out, the V promo as well. So this card is actually pretty good in V Premium. Not only that, it's kind of like an old school G Columbard effect where you can call something on attack as long as it's being boosted. But the second skill where you can check the top 5 for a grade 2 or less, like early on, is super consistent. And as you can notice, you could even reduce cards like Greed Shade. Your Columbards can be reduced to 5 or, wow, to 3 copies. And if you play the card Sea Strolling Banshee, you have more chances of finding this, so you can actually write it and actually get a selective mill that way too. Furthermore, you still have a navigator engine to like really accelerate the deck to the point where you can have successful multi-attack turns with Skull Dragons with a Night Rose type of play. Another cool deck that I saw was Astro Poets, and what's really cool is it's also one of my Metafy students, Kawal, that did well, and I interviewed them recently on my channel if you want to check that out. and the deck is what it does. You're taking advantage of the Astral Deity Valkyrion with the restanding that Uranus provides. You have perfect guards to protect you to stay alive. You have 4 scanning cards, and you play 12 crit, literally 12 freaking crit. It deck ends, and so you're restanding and you get multiple drive checks. You're going to see a lot of crits and really seal the deal. There are turns that you can technically 0 to 6 damage, possibly, if your opponent's not ready for that. And so when the Valkyrion swings, it's a 70k plus beater potentially. Like, it's really hard to even guard that normally. So you need a perfect guard, really, especially if it restands again. And again, congrats to Koal for his accomplishment too. It was his first top 8 as well. And if you guys are interested in MetaFi, feel free to check me out on my page as well. Happy to help out where I can. Lastly, for standard, we have Minerva, we have Hexorb, we see Gandiva, and we see Tamiyura, actually. That's really cool. And for the rest of top 8, we see more Tamiyura, we see Willista again, and then Zorga Maskas. Taking a quick look with the Minerva list, again, shout out to Steven. Like, he just won both of them at first place. So we got 2 sponsored invites, man. Unbeatable, right? And so great choices. What's interesting is this grade 3. So this is what I've seen before in premium, but I didn't realize you could technically play this in standard, but like I can see why he tried to decide this. It gets over the triggers essentially, and you can also kind of like stack the top of your deck in a way that you want to play into it essentially, so that helps a lot. And then if you so happen to have the over trigger in your drop zone already, then you could take advantage of it and give something else plus 15k. So there's some flexibility with this card, so I might even try this out on my own Minerva build. But of course, you're expecting Thassus, of course, and then also Beryllium. So these phenomenal cards, and he's playing the alternate arts of the crits, so you could play these as well for any clan. He's playing not even the Keter OT, he's playing the one that is also essentially another crit. So in standard, actually, you can play only 8 critical triggers. But with this one, it's almost like the 9th. And so this is something to add to the aggression, which I would agree with this choice. And then, of course, if you play Minerva, you definitely value the draws as well, because you need combo pieces and also having a healthy hand size as well. The deck of interest, though, was the Tamiyura deck that I wanted to dive into a little bit deeper. It got recently support as well back in DBT 11, and it's great to see it. And essentially, it takes advantage of these 2 cards over here that you can keep calling out to have that 5 attack type of play as well. But not only that, like at the beginning of your right face, you also get this additional plus 5k, which makes it even harder to hit, essentially. They're also playing the grade 2 promo that came out too, which helps build a feel if you really need to, especially those initial attackers. So essentially, if it's in the bind zone, then you can check if 2 or more Urigas were put into the soul, and you have cards such as the Broken Toys that actually soul charge each of the dolls, essentially. So this will trigger that, and you're good to go with forming your field pretty easily. But then you have the rest of the attacks to follow with once you attack with the Vanguard. Now going into the Netherlands, and we see 3 topping Greydon Maskas. Like, holy crap. And 1 Gandiva. And as we go to the rest of the top 8, we can see Minerva also got in, Willista, and Ava. Ava did get support too as well. But the deck that we really want to see a little more deeper into is Greydon as well. And there's other phenomenal players that have top with this deck. I know Derek Dow did in Sydney too, so shout out to him and all these players that top at this Netherlands BCS as well. And we have a phenomenal restander, and what's cool is that he just takes 3 regards, and the fact that he gets power as well, and then you have other cards that just cards like the Incane. So when it's put into regard, or from regard into soul, your Vanguard, by your Vanguard's ability, which it will do, it'll get +5 in a drive. And then also it has the other skill when it's placed on rearguard. If you persona roll, you can soul charge. Because of the Maskas ability, especially with the Hydreigon, and you have your Dragon Tree cards that you're able to search the Hydreigon, your persona right turns are going to be like instantaneously, basically. And you have other cards such as this one that basically is regarded as the same names as the other cards with Desire Devil in your soul currently. So you can deck in as well. So it's a restanding Vanguard type of deck. It decked ins, and you set out really well to have a persona right on top of that with this Maskas unit. So it's really solid. Switching to premium, and so we have Chaos Breaker, we have Beatrice, we have Susanoo, and we have Chaos Breaker again. And for the rest of top 8, we see more Norakami, we see Steam Maidens, we see Katrina, and we also Riviere. Wow, that's pretty cool. There were some deck lists that were missing from the top 4 and top 8. So the one that was also interested to go into was the OTT one. This was Maxine Jalon as well. So shout out to that Maxime as well. And shout out to Maxine Solom too, because he also topped with a Beatrice, but he doesn't have his list up there. So essentially, I have faced this type of deck at BCS Rosemont, and essentially the Susano engine helps you get to the GB turns a lot easier, but you're also decked in your deck, and you're getting to the point where you use cards like this to reuse cards to keep going through your deck and stacking potentially. You also play Calicos as well. And you get to the point where you have essentially by the time your Vanguard attacks, if you have 10 or less cards, then you have the Witch Popo lock essentially. And you have it where they can only call grade zeros. However, they can play the Stillwater, and essentially Stillwater prevents you from not playing G Guardians or grade zeros. So you can't guard with anything from hand. You have to use cards that intercept or maybe abilities or the blitz orders such as Sanctitude to stop one of the popos in general. And if they have two, which this list plays two, and they could also grab them again with this card too, it's just phenomenal. And you can use this card to also recycle your grade 3 heals to keep surviving and staying low damage essentially. So that way you can take some hits, but at the same time you're safe because you're healing back as well. And there's no pressure for you to necessarily damage your opponent. You could keep them at 2, you can keep them at 3, and once you're ready for the Popo, it's just one shot, literally. Like, they have to guard those 3 attacks because they're going to have double or triple crit from the drive tracks themselves. So it's just very deadly. Switching gears to V Premium, and so we have Rising Nova, we have 2 Favas, and Omega Glendios. Wow, that's pretty cool. And the rest of the top 8, we see Luard, which is expected. We see Fenrir, which is really cool. And we see Beatrice as well. And this is V Premium, so I'm surprised they're playing Beatrice over Night Rose, actually. But the deck that I really wanted to dive in was Harf's list, who got first. So congrats to you, amigo. And this list is always like phenomenal because you kind of know what to expect with Spike Brothers, but there's always some cards that like, okay, he's playing the Spiking Cyclone. He's also playing the Maximum, and then you get the Spike, the Bull Spike essentially. And it's just a very solid deck. He is playing the one of Jumbo the Stun Gun as well. So I'm guessing he has the opportunity to move those markers, the force markers, because remember with Rising, you get Force 1 and Force 2 at the same time. And you copy the skills from all these grade 3 units become your Vanguard skills. So you're able to restain your Vanguard. You're able to hit hard with your rear guards. It's just very aggressive overall. So just a great deck. Interesting. He is playing a lot of draw triggers. Yes, he is playing 12 draw triggers, actually. Interesting. I think I would see normally also some crits. My guess is that he wanted to make sure he survived and had the pieces he needed. And at that point, it was just brute force with all these like attacks. And I'm excited to see when he does his deck profile, if he hasn't done yet in his channel too. So looking forward to that as well. And whew, the last BCS from this prior weekend, Malaysia. And so Premium, Norakami, Chaos Breaker, and Melissa as well. With the rest of top 8, we see Raging Form, which we'll dive into. We see Highlander as well, and another Norakami deck. The Raging Form player actually had a pick on Twitter instead of a normal deck log too, that I could find. And one thing that did stood out is that they're playing the Legion, which is PBO over here, the Abyss Legion. And it's great because you can actually use the Chain Rank or Stride to copy the Heart's abilities. That includes the Legion ability too. So you can have a grade 4 Stride that Legions with the grade 2 mate, and you have kind of like a Legion Stride kind of shenanigans too, with the effects of PBO, Abyss, especially. You restand easily, you get triple drive too for both attacks. It's really advantageous. And because you perform Legion, you can return triggers such as your heals, your crits, your draw PGs, cards that you need, your combo pieces such as your grade 1s if you need to search them. And looking through the rest of the list, he's playing like the grade 1 PG Revenger that's also searchable by Renault, which is the grade 1 on hit search, top 3. Also, you can return it with the G-Guard that returns grade 1s too, so you can kind of recycle your grade 1 PG easily. I play one myself too for that very reason. Like, it's searchable to an extent, and you can recycle it pretty easily. And he's playing 2 grade 3 heals and 2 of the Revenger heals. So you can use the Revenger heals to soul charge, but also counter charge. More than likely it's for the counter charge too. It just helps with that. And again, it's a Revenger too, so searchable by other Revenger type cards. And then also like playing like 13 crit for more aggression. He is playing for the Revenger crit and for the Stride Fighter crit. I wonder if he's tried out the Kafar, which is the Cleric crit. So they got Errata to essentially, if you damage stack them, you get to draw from that. I guess he didn't really have a problem with it, so, and it worked out for him. So kudos to this player as well. Switching to V Premium, we have Ansh, we have another Bermuda Triangle. Oh wow, triple Bermuda Triangle decks. Oh wow, and then Thava. So this is the C's, top 4. And for the rest of top 8, and we have Highlander as well included in there. Gosh, okay, that's 3/4 of the top 8 is Magano Knockout decks. With Spectral Duke and Luard, we're gonna dive into the Spectral Duke actually. And this one was sideways, but bear with me. So as we can see, the 4 original Spectrals, the reverse dupes here, the right chain essentially that we see here with the Vortimir's, top 5 grade 3 Searcher, phenomenal. The Kaiden and Hull package as well, with Thin Drain and the Cavalier. So this helps call more regards essentially. It's great to see Spectral Duke doing so well as well. Kudos to that player too. And to wrap up, we have standard for Malaysia. And so we have Zorga Maskas, 2 Minervas, and 1 Wallista. And the rest of top 8, oh my god, 4 Minervas. And then of course Gandiva and more Wallista to add. So I'm going to dive into the Zorga one. Let's see what we got here. So he is playing 2 copies of the Kyo Servant. This essentially gets you to the 4th attack for this deck, but your bread and butter are really going to be your Roaming Prison Dragons. Powering crit, it's very threatening as well. Definitely for Shadow Cloak's very needed card. So he's playing 2 of this card to have at least the Dragon Tree. So he's not playing the grade 2 as well that searches for the Hydra Gem. So it's a hard search unless you mill it with the Shadow Cloak. So if you felt comfortable, that's fine too. This is a card that I'm also trying as well. It is Meteoric Habitat. This is really good in the early game too, because you're still like trying to get to your deck as much as possible. So what I realized, and if you notice, he's not playing Ye Wandering Souls. I've actually also changed my deck to not play Ye Wandering Souls anymore, because you deck them with this card pretty often with other cards too, such as Forbidden Doll and the Hydra Gem as well. And because you deck them, your drive tracks are more likely to be scarier with triggers, especially if you know, crits essentially. So this gets you a piece to play with from your deck, but also like set up your drive checks and damage checks pretty nicely as well. And I guess they wanted to have some defensive alternatives with the Blitz Order too as well. That's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. A lot of BCSs that I had to cover this past weekend. I purposely waited multiple days to make sure we can get more lists on Fuzzy's website. I wanted to see what else we can show off in this video. And again, there's a lot of BCSs, so I only showed a few decks for each BCS. And in fact, I think one of them had a missing V Premium list, for example, too. So I hope this was insightful. Hope this was helpful too. If you guys have any questions about the metagame, feel free to like just comment down below. What are your thoughts too moving forward with the metagame? I expect to see more like Green and Maskas, for example, in standard. It's a fun deck too. Premium is still figuring itself out. I mean, it's what you expect. I mean, you kind of know what the top decks or decks that can actually perform as well. So that's so exciting. And then V Premium has that diversity still to it. Nothing has changed except for like the V promos. And a deck like Night Rose has gotten stronger, and as we can see with the tops too, thanks to those V promos too. So as we get to see the remaining V promos, I'm curious to see if those other decks that are still waiting for their promos shine a little bit more too in the top 8 as well. And again, let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts, your feedback. And if you want to support the channel, use the affiliate links for 50 card shop, trading card min, TG player, and so on. And also check out Dueling Guards, products and accessories for your swag as well. On to the next one, amigos. Bye.